Words have power. They have power. They literally can change your life for the good or the bad. How will you use that power? How easy is it to talk, to speak, to communicate, to throw out words, but how hard is it to take those words back and get them back in you? You could say it's impossible, right? Once you say something, it's out there. There's no taking it back. You know, you can say I'm sorry and you can apologize, you can do all the things, but you can't really take the words back. Can't take the words back. Easy to speak, but you can't take it back. It's estimated that people speak up to 16,000 words per day on average. 16,000. Some of you probably know people that maybe double that or triple that because they just talk a lot, you know. Anybody got any friends that just... Oh, people are pointing at you.
I talk.
Riley? Yeah. Quite a few of you talk a lot, so maybe you're maxing this 16,000 words even more. On average, it says that people talk about 150 words per minute on average. I know that to be true because I use when I do some videos, some 60-second reels, I'll use a teleprompter app. And when I type the script in there, I found out that 192 words is the sweet spot for me to do in 60 seconds. That's pretty fast. I was talking pretty fast to get in 192 per minute. So think about how many words are going out per minute and how many minutes are in a day, how many words we're speaking, and none of them can be taken back. Words are powerful. Words have power. Everybody turn to Proverbs chapter 18. There's some Bibles on the tables, if y'all pass them around. Proverbs 18, who would like to read? I need a volunteer. Who wants to read? Raise your hand first. Verse 21.
The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit.
Thank you. Life and death are in the power of the tongue. The tongue has the power of life and death. Every word that you say impacts someone's life in some way, right? Every word. It may be small impact, but it may be a big impact. But such a small thing has such power. Think how small your tongue is. It could almost be one of the smallest things on your body, minus your fingers or toes. Yet it has more power than probably anything you have. Such a small thing. James chapter 3 says that we can put small bits, that thing that you put into a horse's mouth. You can put that small thing in a horse's mouth and connect straps to it, and you can literally turn a big, huge horse. How much do horses weigh? Anybody know?
2,000 pounds.
There you go. I don't know. Sounds good. 2,000 some pounds can be controlled with a small little thing in their mouth. Think about a ship, a big ship. There's a small little rudder underneath the ship, as Ethan would know, with a wheel or a tiller that controls which direction this huge ship goes. Just like our tongue, it's a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. It makes great speeches. It does great things. And then that James 3 goes on to say, consider how a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. A big forest fire started with a small little spark. The tongue can either tear someone's heart apart or it can build someone's heart up. The tongue. The words. So what do we do about this thing? What do we do about our tongues and about our mouth? How do we control it? How do we use it the right way? Well, here are a few thoughts, and if you want to take notes, I have 3 points. You want to write them down? The first one is think before you speak. Think before you speak. Maybe you've heard this before. This is nothing new or revolutionary. But anger, frustration, pain, all those things cause our tongues to quickly interject into the conversation in the way that we're feeling. So when something happens and you get upset, you quickly say something, right? And maybe it wasn't the nicest thing. Maybe it was mean. Maybe it was hateful. Maybe you regretted saying it as soon as you said it, or maybe when you get home and you think about it later, maybe then you regret it. And you can apologize, you can say I'm sorry, you can call the person, and they can either accept your apology or not. But it's already been out there. It's already done. It's already gone. You can't take it back. That's why it's so important to think before we speak. Because situations that trigger these emotions, they can cause a need to respond quickly. Somebody open up to James chapter 1 and read verse 19, whoever gets there first. James 1:19.
My dear brothers and sisters, take notes. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry.
Quick to listen or hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. Slow to anger. So we shouldn't be quick to speak, we should be what? Quick to what? Quick to listen. And how should we speak? Quick or slow? Slow. But don't we tend to do it the opposite? Don't we sometimes speak before we even completely listen to what's being said? Has that guy ever got anybody in trouble? Has anybody ever said something in class or to your parents maybe before you thought about it? Yeah. Corbin? Yeah. Uh-huh. It happens. This is the challenging instruction, though. To train yourself to be slow to speak is not easy. It's hard. It's hard. Being quick to talk is human nature. Like, you got something to say, and sometimes you already know what somebody's going to say once they start, and so you don't even want to wait for them to finish. You just want to move on or answer their question, right? So you talk over them, and then they talk over you, and then it just gets kind of confusing because everybody's just talking over themselves, and nobody's really communicating effectively. It's hard to listen. Listen is hard. Being quick to listen takes work and patience. So before you speak, ask yourself these questions. Why do I want to say this? Whatever it is you have to say, why do I want to say it? What do I hope to accomplish by saying this? What's the point of me saying this? Will these words encourage someone's heart, or will they tear it apart? Will it encourage them, or is it going to tear them down? Is it going to make them feel bad? Are these words something I will be glad I squeezed out like toothpaste? Or will I regret them trying to scramble to stuff them back into the toothpaste tube, but I can't? These are questions you need to ask. It'll help you not get in trouble, help you maybe not get grounded, help you be a better husband, wife one day, help you be a better communicator, help you not to get into arguments at home. It'll help. Learning these things now, because if you try to learn them later, it's more difficult. Just try to learn them now, and your life will go a lot more peaceful. Let's just say, a whole lot more peaceful. So if you're having a moment of intense emotions or anger or stress or frustration, or you're just mad, maybe you need to take a moment. Maybe you need to take a deep breath. Maybe you need to count to 3 before you respond. Because just that taking a deep breath, just that counting to 3, totally could change what comes out of your mouth next. Would you agree? If we could just take a moment and then respond. I think it would change things. I think it could change your community, your neighborhood, your class, your home life, lots of things. If you could just take that moment. Understanding why you're feeling the way you do before spewing out ugly words from your mouth that will only cause more hurt, anger, or damage is very important. Because words hurt. Anybody ever been spoken to in a mean way? Like really just tore you apart? Really made you feel like crap? And you went home upset? Words hurt, right? Sometimes words, you could argue and say, sometimes words hurt more than spankings or beatings or whatever maybe your parents did or didn't do. When I was a kid, it was the belt. And the belt hurt. The belt hurt, for real. It left a mark. But words hurt too. And sometimes words hurt even worse than a belt. Or a little pat on the behind if you remember those little ones when you have little kids. Somebody turn to Proverbs 15:1.
A gentle answer turns away word, but
Wrath.
a harsh word stirs up anger.
A gentle word. A gentle word. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. So one deflects anger, and the other one makes tempers flare. It makes the situation worse. Isn't it interesting how when somebody says something mean to us or hateful to us, we say something back to them? And then things just get crazy, right, at that point. I mean, you might start throwing blows, like who knows what's going to happen. You start kicking, knocking stuff over. Like it can get crazy. All because one person said one thing that offended somebody else. Now you offended, you got to offend back. Now you're hurt, you're all in your feelings. So now you got to throw something back. And this leads to fights, guns, violence, chaos, right? And then you're in the news, and it just ain't good, you know? It's not a pretty picture when you get all up in the news for doing something crazy. We got to take time to think about how we can respond before we speak. Before we speak, not after. It's easy to assess after. Got to think about it before. And then number 2, encourage and uplift others with your words. Encourage and uplift others. What a great concept that is. Why do you want to be mean? Does anybody want to be mean to other people? Good. So then why are we saying things sometimes that hurt other people's feelings? We should be encouraging others. Your words can be used to encourage and uplift others. Proverbs 16:24. Proverbs 16:24. Flip over a page maybe. Who's got it? First one.
Gracious words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones.
Yes. Imagine that. Our words can be like honey. Maybe you don't like honey, but honey's pretty sweet, right? So just think of it as like our words can be sweet, a sweet sound to someone else, bringing sweetness and healing to others. Healing and sweetness can be just shared through our words. You don't even have to do anything. Maybe you don't have to even leave the house. You could text it. You could email it. You could messenger it. You could say it and you could bless somebody with a word without even leaving your house. That's an amazing thing. Who was in here earlier that shared something about their father or grandfather with a health issue, right? And what did you say out of that story, which is not a good story, but you found good in it because what did you say happened?
This boy at school asked to pray for me.
Somebody at school asked to pray for her. What a nice thing. What a nice gesture. What a positive, encouraging, uplifting thing in a time like that. But what's really cool is that you thought of that part of the story versus the other part. And when I asked for good stories, something good that happened, you brought out the good out of that story, which was encouraging to me. Because she could have brought up the other side of that story, the negative side of how bad that is. But she chose to think on the good side, which is encouraging and uplifting. Think about the last time someone spoke encouraging words to you. How did it feel? What did it do to your day? Now think about the last time you encouraged someone else. What did that feel like? Was that a good feeling to be able to say something nice to somebody else and you can see their immediate response and maybe you help them kind of get out of a little funk they were in or help them through a problem? It's good to encourage people and lift people up. There's a ripple effect that happens when you start speaking positively. It kind of just starts to snowball. And our speech has this power to uplift, inspire, and bring hope to other people and ourselves. It just kind of spreads. Just like gossip spreads, encouraging, uplifting words can spread too. And they can do the opposite effect, which is what we all should want. Les Brown, a mentor of mine, famous speaker, said, develop your mind and your communication skills because once you open your mouth, you tell the world who you really are. Once you open your mouth, you tell the world who you are. Because whatever comes out is what you got in here. Right? Think about it. You can tell the way somebody's feeling. You can tell their background. You can tell what they're going through. You can tell a lot about somebody just by the way they speak and the words they choose to use. Tell about their environment, what they listen to, what they watch, who their influences are. All that comes out in our words. We've got to be aware of that. Because others are aware of it because they're listening. So you got to be aware of what's coming out. In a world that sometimes feels heavy, we've got to be the uplifter. In a world that is kind of dark, as we could all agree, we got to be the light with our words. And number 3, watch what goes into your mind. The things that go in will inevitably always come out, whether you realize it or not. Garbage in, garbage out. What are the things you're pouring into your mind? There are so many things distracting us and fighting for our attention today. So much noise. It's a noisy world. Maybe it's time to start listening to worship music on the school bus instead of something else. Maybe it's time to start reading the Bible and memorizing verses instead of other things. Maybe it's time to step away and spend some quiet time with the Lord before you say or do something. Just take a minute. Spend some quiet time with the Lord. We know that the Lord can speak in loud ways. We know in the Bible that he came to people in some loud ways. I mean, we see that he came in the wind in the book of Job and at Pentecost. We see that he came in an earthquake at Mount Sinai when he gave the 10 Commandments. We see him coming in the form of a fire, of a burning bush when he spoke to Moses. The Lord can speak through some big and loud things like a hurricane today or a pandemic even. I mean, God speaks through those things. And so we know God can speak in those big ways, but in 1 Kings 19, if you haven't read 1 Kings 18 and 19, it's really a good read. Start with chapter 18 and listen to that story. It's a really good story. And then it rolls on into 1 Kings 19, and we're going to pick up a little bit of it because we don't have time to read it all. But we see that the Lord coming and speaking to Elijah in a different way than the loud wind and fire and earthquakes. It says in verse 9, there, talking about Elijah, went into a cave and spent the night. And the word of the Lord came to him and said, "What are you doing, Elijah?" Elijah replied, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, tore down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me." The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Then, as Elijah does that, a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. A gentle whisper. If I was to run around here and get all crazy and start throwing stuff, y'all could hear that, right? You'd pay attention. I'd get your attention. But what about when I talk real soft? Gentle whisper. In order for you to hear me, you have to be quiet and lean in. It'd be hard to hear me with a gentle whisper. But sometimes God just wants you to lean in a little bit. To take the headphones off. To turn things off. To stop talking. To stop looking around and just lean in and hear the still small voice, the gentle whisper. So then verse 13 says, when Elijah heard it. He heard the gentle whisper. He pulls his cloak over his face and went and stood at the mouth of the cave. Maybe the reason you're frustrated, mad, or judgmental and saying things you shouldn't is because you haven't taken the time to step away and quiet yourself and spend time with the Lord. Spend some quiet time, just you and Him. Not on a Sunday morning, not at youth group, not with your parents, not with your siblings, just you and God. And the quietness and the stillness. There's something special about that. If you've ever experienced it, there's something really special about that moment. It's hard to stay in that moment, but man, the longer you can stay in that moment, the better it gets and the more you may hear instructions and guidance and things to do. It's in those still quiet moments when the Lord is going to speak potentially a word to you. What's interesting, though, is in verse 9 that we read, it said when Elijah got to the caves, he went in and spent the night. Pretty makes sense, right? He was running from his life. He's running from this crazy lady, if you read chapter 18, that even this man feared, so you know she must have been a beast. But he's running from her, and he hides in a cave and spends the night. But once he hears the whisper of God, he doesn't go back into the cave to hide anymore. He doesn't even go back into the cave to get his stuff. It says he stood at the mouth of the cave. He stood right there, ready to do what needed to be done, ready to go wherever God told him to go. He was ready. He was standing at attention, ready, because he heard that gentle whisper of the Lord. Something sweet and special about that, to keep you from having to hide anymore, to keep you from getting away from your fears, that'll help you go to the next step and where you want to go and what God wants to do with you and what his will is for you and what his plan for you. It's in the gentle whispers. But you got to step away from the argument sometimes to hear. You got to step away from your fears, your frustrations, from all the noise going on around you and get quiet and still. The most effective communicators, I was in sales, I was in real estate, and this is something I always learned, this is something I learned and taught. The best communicators, you know what they do better than anybody else? Who knows? The best communicators, who said it? They listen. That's the greatest form of communication. Because if you really listen to your customer, your client, your friend, your spouse, whatever, you'll be able to communicate much more effectively because you'll be able to say what they need to hear because you listen to them and now you know how to respond. But if you don't listen, then you're just the one doing all the talking and the other person is not receiving what they need to receive because you ain't listening to them and you don't know what they need. That's how you communicate. And the same as with God. We want to go to prayer and we just want to tell God all these things, and that's great to talk to God, but you got to also listen so you can hear from him. People say, well, God's not speaking to me. Well, have you listened? Because he does speak. But sometimes it's a gentle whisper. It's when it's real quiet. And there's no distractions. That's when he can speak. Our words have the power of life or death for someone else. But here's the truth. Watch this. Our words have the power of life and death for us as well. This is like the next step. This is a little advanced, but I think you guys are ready for it, okay? We're not just talking about the words that we say to others. Let's talk about the words we say to ourselves. Because there's some things we tell ourselves that are ugly. There's some things we tell ourselves that we wouldn't tell our little sister. So then why are you telling it to yourself? If you want to say it to your baby sister, because it'd be like, oh, that would be mean and hateful. Well, why are you telling it to yourself? Does that make sense? Why are we talking so negatively about ourselves? God's creation. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Eat its fruit. That sounds kind of funny. Anybody wonder what that means? Eat its fruit? In other words, they will receive, the people that use the tongue, that love to use the tongue, the people that like to talk, which we all know how to talk, right? I've heard everybody in here talk. So we all could say we love to talk because we do it. All those people will receive either good or evil according to the quality of their speeches. You could receive good or evil based off the way you talk. Isn't that interesting? It's kind of like reaping and sowing. If you keep sowing discouragement and negativity, you start to kind of receive it and reap it. It's kind of weird. But if you're, like we said earlier, sowing positivity and encouragement and uplifting, it kind of ripples. And it ends up coming back to you. And you'll feel better. People will talk to you differently. You'll really see a shift and a change just from doing that. How we speak to ourselves greatly determines our choices and ultimately how our life turns out. Just with the power of our words, our life can change. Remember, Just with a little turn of the rudder or the wheel, a big ship can make a turn. Just with a little turn of the bit that's in a horse's mouth, you can turn a 2,000-pound animal the direction you want it to go. The littlest thing can make drastic turns in your life if you can learn to control it and use it to sow encouragement, peace, prosperity, uplifting. I pray that you all have someone in your life who encourages you and supports you, but inevitably there will come a time when no one is around to tell you good job. No one's there to cheer you on when times are hard. And you may find yourself speaking negatively, saying, I'm not good enough, I'm a loser, I'm never going to be anything, I'm never going to make it. If you're not careful, those words can start to take you down a downward spiral. And sometimes it's hard to get back up from that once you go down far enough. We must speak life over ourselves. We must encourage ourselves. I remember not too long ago, it was 2 houses back, we had wooden stairs, not carpet. You know, wooden stairs can get a little slick. So I hit the first step, and I was falling. I mean, just boom, 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 boom. You know, it's funny, kind of, but not. And I'm trying to grab all this stuff. I can't slow myself down. Just boom, boom. And as I'm falling, I remember hearing my wife, who's up there, like you can see through the banister. I remember her saying, "It's gonna be okay." And so once I fell down and got myself together and, kind of got back up, I asked her, "Who were you talking to? Who were you saying that to?" I was wondering if she was talking to Corbin or my daughter Lily. She said, "I was telling it to myself." I was telling it to myself. Because sometimes the fears and the nightmares and the problems and the stress that's in our head is overwhelming. And we got to counter that with some good talks like, it's going to be okay, I'm going to make it. I am good enough. I am loved, I am special, I am somebody. God loves me. We've got to encourage ourselves when we're falling down the steps of life. Many times I've had to encourage myself and speak life over myself. I mean, with my background and different things and judgment and people looking at me and not getting I couldn't even get a job and all these things, I could let that really affect me. But I know God's forgiven me of those things. And I know I'm not that same person. So I have to keep constantly, even to this day, speak life over myself. I got to encourage myself to get up here and speak to you. This ain't easy. I get nervous, I got to speak life. To get the encouragement to encourage myself. I love this story in 1 Samuel chapter 30 about David. David and his men went out to a battle. He was actually kind of tricked and pulled out of camp to go to this battle. And while they were gone, trying to win this battle, the enemy came into their camp. And so it says when they came back home, the Amalekites had burned their town to the ground and captured the women and children and everybody else. And then took the girls and the little babies and hauled them off. Didn't kill them, just captured them and took them away. So when David and his men saw the ruins and realized what had happened to their families, they wept until they could not weep anymore. That's a lot of crying. Crying until you can't cry no more. And David was greatly distressed, the Bible says, for the people spoke of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and for his daughters. And then it says this, but David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. People wanted to stone him and kill him because he was the man in charge. And he led all of the men out to fight this battle, and while he was misled to do that, the enemy came in and stole all their wives and children. So everybody was like, we're going to kill you, David. Like, they want to stone him. But David had to encourage himself in the Lord. He encouraged himself in the Lord. And then David inquired of the Lord, verse 8, saying, shall I pursue the troop, the people that came after them and stole all the people? He said, should I go after them? Because, a lot of people would just say, well, I messed up. I'm a failure. I lost. Do what you got to do. I'm not good enough. Like, he could easily go down that road because everybody was against him at this point. But no, he went to ask the Lord, should I continue? Should I go after them? Shall I overtake them? And this is what the Lord said. Pursue, for you shall surely overtake them, and without fail, recover all. Recover all. If David would have fallen victim to the poor me mentality, or believed what others were saying about him and not encouraged himself or strengthened himself in the Lord, he would never have gotten everything back that was taken from him, and more. And more. He didn't fall victim of the poor me. He didn't fall victim of the discouragement and what everybody was saying about him and what all his friends at school were talking about and what was spreading on social media. He didn't let any of that affect him. He went straight to the source, encouraged himself in God, and then said, God, do you want me to go after them? Which means for you to even ask that question, you're ready. For you to even ask that question, you got enough strength and encouragement to even think about that. And God said, yes, go and you will get it all back. And he got more if you read the story. He got a little extra, got a little bonus out of the deal. Words have power. They have power. They literally can change your life for the good or the bad. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. How will you use that power?